Nier developed a cult following back in the day because of its beautiful soundtrack and great story. The gameplay, however, was serviceable but subpar, even more so when compared to more recent action RPGs, making it harder to go back to. That's why Nier Replicant version 1.2 promises to bring updated combat, overhauled visuals, and a bit of additional content. As far as spoilers go, most of the footage shown will be from the first half of the game and trailers. With that said, you won't be hearing any specific details about the later half, and the shots of it will be sparse. So on April 22nd, 2010, Nier Replicant and Nier Gestalt released in Japan. Nier Replicant was exclusive to PS3, and Nier Gestalt was exclusive to Xbox 360. The core difference between the two games was the main protagonist and their relationship to Yona. In Replicant, you play as her brother. In Gestalt, you play as her father. The plot, story beats, and overarching story are the exact same. However, the overall narrative of the whole game strongly caters to the younger protagonist, and the gameplay between the two games is entirely identical, down right to the animations. The only difference between the two games is the writing around the protagonists. The game takes place at different times, and the two protagonists speak and are treated differently from each other. And during the second half, the brothers visibly grown a lot, but the father just loses an eye to imply his change. So why the difference? Well, when the younger protagonist was designed, the higher-ups at Square didn't think the young one would do well in North America. The compromise became to develop two different versions of the game, where only the version with the father was published in North America. Additionally, some DLC was released worldwide where you could play through some challenging dungeons as the opposing game's protagonist. So in Replicant you could play through the father, and in Gestalt it was the brother. Visually, between the PS3 and Xbox versions, the 360 version has a lead, but you need this comparison to really tell. Also, depending on the region of the version you play, the structure and the background of the opening of the game will change. The two versions of the game also have slightly different color grading too, as you'll see throughout the video. And in Japan, for Replicant, Kaine's cursing in Japanese is censored as a gag. Meanwhile, Gestalt doesn't actually have Japanese voice acting. Rather, Gestalt in Japan uses the North American localization's voice acting.
Die, die, die! I'm gonna pull out your teeth and cram them up your ass!
That woman has a fouler mouth than one would expect.
Actually, that's about what I expected.
Nier Replicant version 1.2 was developed by Toy Logic. The team has been adamant that this is not a remaster, but please understand, that doesn't mean they're claiming it's a remake by any means either. It's more appropriately being called an upgraded version of the game. Maybe it'll make more sense once we understand what's been changed. So, since this is Replicant, the game stars the young protagonist for the first time overseas. However, you can still play as the father protagonist in the DLC that's included in the base game now. A handful of new scenes have been introduced into the main game. Not only is there a whole new ending to achieve, but also a new dungeon during the second half of the game. New scenes and events build upon the world and address lore for characters. For example, during the first half, you take a detour for the man who's going to fix the canal that you use to fast travel in the second half. Weapon stories were added too, like in other Yoko Taro titles. The localization has changed a lot, with most changes stemming from the different protagonist, while other changes correct inaccuracies in the original localization.
Hey, Dad, you want to hear about the crazy dream I had last night? See, I was in it, and you were in it too, and we were riding around on this huge pink cloud, and then...
Yona, I'm sorry. I have to go. You can tell me when I get back.
Can I come with you today?
Better not. I'm probably going hunting.
Okay.
This upgraded version of Replicant features an extensively overhauled combat system. Saki Ito had support and advice from Platinum Games on how to tweak and improve combat without losing the identity of the game's original combat. So new to the game is an air combo, a heavy attack combo, a launcher, a Roxas-looking reversal, auto battle settings for the easy difficulty, instant weapon switching, and a targeting system. Now what's been changed? Movement feels closer to that of Nier Automata. It's much more fluent and dashing is much clearer, though it's about the same speed. Hit stop was significantly reduced. Dodge rolls aren't as much of a commitment anymore, you have more iframes, and you can dash out of them. You move faster while blocking them before, and the parry window is much wider. Charged attacks were changed too and are much faster, and final blows are done with just the B button when near a fallen enemy, instead of holding block and X or Y. Outside of the fluid movement, the most significant change is that you can now use magic and melee simultaneously. Because of this, magic attacks have been rebalanced, Dark Hand's hitbox has been noticeably shrunken and does less damage, though Dark Lance and Dark Blast will now home in on targets. Ito noted that when updating the enemy AI, it was challenging because of unfamiliarity with the original code and programming. There was key staff in this upgraded version that was around for the original, but as you can imagine, any new blood would be struggling being handed that old code. Anyway, so due to all the new tools and abilities in combat, the game is less difficult, but from what Ito has stated, it could have been much easier. For example, armored enemies were buffed. It's not nearly as easy to break through their armor anymore. Item pickups are faster and don't pause the game anymore. When fishing, you can see a bobber now, and you'll be able to actually hear clearer when you've got something on the line, as opposed to having to watch the pattern of the rod bending. And regardless, if you can't get a handle on fishing, then you can skip it when it's required in the story. The game has a farming feature that utilizes real-world time. On the PS3 and 360, you could change your system time to fast forward and cheat the process. Now on the newer consoles, you can only adjust your time zone to speed it up. You can still simply change your system time on PC though. The boar in the original would hardly turn but had some decent drifting, but in the upgraded version it's reversed. Turning is much easier, but drifting takes some getting used to. The upgraded version features a plethora of settings previously not present. Dual audio, toggles for everything on the HUD, auto sprint, vibration, menu confirmation button, and in-depth camera control and custom controller options. Visuals have been overhauled on every front, from higher resolution textures, shadows, and updated shaders, to seriously revamped environments. The main character designs have also been reworked and updated. Kaine noticeably represents her original concept art much more faithfully as well. Now the PS3 and Xbox 360 version of Nier runs at 720p at up to 30 FPS. Meanwhile on Xbox One S and Series S you'll get 792p at 60 FPS, pretty stable. On PS5 and PS4 and PS4 Pro, all the same, you get 1080p and 60 FPS, stable as well. And on Xbox One X and on Xbox Series X you get 1440p 60 FPS. Cutscenes are kept at 30 FPS on consoles though, but on PC they are not. Speaking of the PC version though, the PC version can go up to 4K and will try to go to frame rates higher than 60. However, some portions of game logic are tied to frame rate, and there is no FPS cap setting in the game, so you will need to cap the FPS to 60 using external settings or software. There's also been several issues reported with the PC port, most I've had too, so I highly suggest you install Special K to remedy many of the issues you'll run into. Meanwhile, I noticed a handful of nice smaller visual differences, like sitting down in Facade, the chief's house in the Eyrie has been colored, the falling animation has been replaced, and Vice will always be present now, where previously he was invisible unless he was needed. The structure in the beginning of the game now depends on the text language you have set. However, the Empire State Building does not show up anymore. The original game did have optional costumes, but the upgraded version adds more of them, including 2B, A2, and 9S costumes that incorporate English and Japanese voice acting for them when used. The soundtrack has been rearranged, and there is a handful of new compositions as well for the new content. Additionally, after completing your first playthrough, you'll unlock optional music from Nier Automata. The voice acting has been entirely redone in both English and Japanese.
防御が硬い。このかいね。全部まとめてぐしゃぐしゃにしてやる。そこを動くな。防御が硬い。このかいね。全部まとめてぐしゃぐしゃにしてやる。そこを動くな。
This is because there wasn't a designated voice actor for the younger protagonist in the first or second halves of the game, and more importantly because every line of dialogue, minor and major, is now voiced. Now thankfully, the talent from the original release returned to reprise their roles, so the iconic voices are all present.
What in the... Are you fucking kidding me? Let me go! Let me... Ugh, I am gonna kill you when I get out.
I assume we'll have to find her as well.
Yep.
What in the... Are you fucking kidding me? Let me go! Let me... Ugh, I am gonna kill you when I get out of here!
I assume we'll have to find her as well.
Yep.
While it's subjective to say, I feel that Toy Logic hit a great balance in preservation of the original game and what made it great, while supplementing it with improved satisfying combat and doing away with that look that a lot of AAA games had back on the PS3 and 360. There's plenty to still love about the original version, it wouldn't have developed its cult following otherwise. While the overall narrative didn't fit the father as much, he still got his fans. Meanwhile, the soundtrack changes can be subjective too, but I feel by the end it really fits Replicant well. Otherwise, if you played Automata, this upgraded version of the game does heavily cater towards you, and if you haven't, this would be an excellent point to jump into the series. And because I was trying to avoid spoilers, this kind of got understated, but the new content is some pretty fantastic fan service, and it has a hefty amount of gameplay to it. So if you have already played the original game and are interested in this version, that new content is also geared towards you. Thanks for watching guys, and as always thank you to my patrons for their support. If you want to keep up to date on future projects, be sure to hit that up or follow me on Twitter. Till next time,